Hello, Facebook. It's Beto here, your daily divinity coach, here for episode number 5 of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. Takes place every Sunday here on Facebook Live, beginning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time every Sunday. So again, we are here for episode number 5, which is entitled Manifesting Priceless Currency. Again, episode number 5, Manifesting Priceless Currency, here on Facebook Live as part of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival, that takes place every Sunday, beginning at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, here again on Facebook Live. So we're just going to give a minute or so to allow people to join. Very excited about today's episode. We just got our first one joining, Francisco Aldape, hello, representing Texas, and I got a couple Texas examples for you, which you'll be interested in hearing. So going to give a couple minutes for some more to join. Good morning. Francisco just said good morning. Good morning, buenos dias. So we're going to go ahead and get started in a minute. Again, I am Beto, your daily divinity coach, here in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. So we just had another one join. Hello, Jose Troncoso joined. Hello, good morning, buenos dias. Happy you could join us. So again, we're here on Facebook Live this Sunday morning, July 12th, to talk about manifesting priceless currency. As part of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival. Hello, Haley just joined. We just had another one join. So we're just going to give another minute or so as we wait for people to join. But again, episode number 5, Manifesting Priceless Currency, as part of my weekly series, Sunday Weekly Revival, every Sunday here on Facebook Live, starting at 11:30 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, 8:30 a.m. 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 8:30 a.m. on the West Coast, Pacific Daylight Time. So I'm going to start actually by talking a little bit more, I haven't mentioned this before, about some stuff here in the background that you see, because I've had some questions come up about this. So the picture right there, that is in fact Oscar De La Hoya, Mexican or Chicano, Mexican-American boxer out of East LA. De La Hoya fought out of East LA. What's interesting about that poster, one of my cousins gave it to me for a Christmas present, is that Oscar there is posed as a southpaw, as a left-hander. And if you've ever watched De La Hoya fight, he's actually fights orthodox or right-handed. But his father taught him at a young age, even though he's naturally left-handed, to fight as a right-hander. So that's one of the few pictures where De La Hoya is actually in a left-handed stance, and I actually got that autographed by him. And when he saw it, he's like, "Whoa!" Because he knows there's not very many pictures of him in a left-handed stance, and so he asked where I got it and whatnot, and I let him know, and he signed it. So anyhow, if you don't know, I am a big boxing fan, and I actually used to be a fight writer. I used to be a ringside correspondent for the boxing matches when I lived in Las Vegas for 5 years. So part of my history. People ask also about this picture back here that I'm pointing to. That is a poster from Comic-Con here in Boston, the comic book conference. So my son is, he likes comic books. So I took him down to multiple Comic-Cons or comic book conferences here in Boston, and they're very enjoyable. And actually, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about an example from a comic book, or actually a comic book superhero movie. So I think we're going to go ahead and get started now. It's been a couple minutes, so we've allowed a few people to go ahead and join. I'm sure there'll be more people joining in a minute. So a couple months back, I'm going to go ahead and take these glasses off, reading glasses. So a couple months back, one of my quote-unquote followers on Instagram reached out to me, and she said, "Beto, I'm doing this series on Instagram live chat about helping people cope with anxiety, particularly during this pandemic, right, the COVID-19 crisis, but also just in general, anxiety as a result of work-related stress and, just life-related stress. And I said, sure, but first I want to ask you a couple questions. I said, number one, is this sponsored by anybody? She said, no, it's just me doing it. I said, great, because I don't, want to get involved with any sponsors. I sponsor everything myself. Those of you who know me, I give away bracelets, right, to all of my followers. So the first one there is a gray bracelet. It says Manifest Justice. The blue one is Manifest Abundance, and the black one is Manifest Immortality. And I give these bracelets out as a set of 3 for free to my followers, and I sponsored that myself. So I said, I just wanted to make sure there is no sponsor. She said, no, this is not sponsored. It's just me doing it. I have a lot of followers who are like me. They're young people, right, early in their career in India, and they're just dealing with a lot of job-related stress, right? They work for IT firms in the U.S., so they're working nights and trying to sleep days. And now with the COVID-19 crisis, there's a lot of anxiety out there, and I just want to do what I can to help the community, help my friends. I said, oh, great. And I said, well, there's anything transactional? She said, no, not at all. Nobody's paying for this. There's no payment or anything like that. It's all free. I said, great, because, everything I do is free as well. So before I forget, if you haven't received your bracelets, please let me know. I'll get those out to you. I ship them out for free to those in the U.S. So please let me know if you haven't gotten your set of bracelets yet. So anyways, I said, okay, great, let's do this Q&A. So we did an interview over Instagram live chat, had a couple 100 people participate from various countries. It was really successful. And as a result of that, about a few weeks later, I ended up starting this weekly revival series because people wanted to hear me chat live in real time. Because prior to that, I was just doing written posts every day. So anyhow, that Q&A actually sparked the title for today's episode, which is Manifesting Priceless Currency. Because during that Q&A, I talked a lot about time. Managing anxiety, your expectations about time, and what do you expect about time? What is it? Of course, talked a little bit about immortality. Those of you have watched my series before or read my posts know that's one of the things that I speak to and I talk about. So anyhow, so we talked about time, and so that's what sparked the title for today's episode. Because when I talk about priceless currency, what I'm really talking about is time. But not just time, love too, because love is priceless, right? Money can't buy love. So love's a priceless currency, but what I also like to call a divine currency. But time, so time's a priceless currency. So I apologize if any of you are disappointed and you thought I was going to talk about, is it vibranium, right? From that comic book superhero movie, Black Panther, right? This some sort of currency like vibranium that's going to make, I'm going to tell you how to mine vibranium, maybe not in Wakanda, but maybe in Chicago or South Texas or something that I know about some mine where vibranium exists, and you can mine this, excavate this priceless commodity and become an instant billionaire. No, that's not the message of today's episode. But it's rather to talk about these priceless commodity time and the divine commodity of love. So what do we know about time? What do the scientists tell us? They tell us that time is a tool that we humans use, that our minds use to help organize things, right? To make sense of things. And that our minds are actually limitless. So in effect, there's no limit to time. There's no limit to time. Ancient wisdom tells us that in each of our minds is a world unto itself. Ancient text tells us to the divine, a day is like 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is like the divine. 1,000 years is like a day to the divine. The great teacher knew this. When he was given a coin, right? The great teacher, and when I talk about the great teacher, I'm talking about, yes, the man from Nazareth, right? Jesus of Nazareth, that some refer to as a prophet, others as the Savior, the Messiah. I'm a pluralist, so I teach to all, right? My message is for all. So I have followers that are Buddhist, that are Hindu, that that are Muslim, that are Catholic, that are Protestant, that are agnostic, that are atheists, because this message of mine that I've been imparted with to help share, this message of manifesting justice, abundance, and immortality for all is for all. It's a pluralist message. It's for all. It doesn't matter what your faith is or if you have no faith at all. So anyhow, so the great teacher was given this coin, right? And this coin had the face of Caesar on it, right? It was during the Roman Empire. And the great teacher looked at this coin and he gave it back to the crowd. He said, "Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's," right? So that passage there, and I've heard this my entire life, has been interpreted by a lot of people to mean that we are to pay our taxes, right? Be compliant, pay your taxes, right? The people in power have been divinely appointed, right? And whether you call the divine God or Allah or the universe, has been divinely appointed by God or Allah or the universe or whatever. So you got to pay tribute. You got to pay tribute, right? That's not necessarily what I believe. I don't believe you shouldn't pay taxes, right? Because you don't want to end up in jail or in financial ruin. But here's what, in my interpretation, Jesus, or the great teacher, was really saying. He's really referring to this idea of time, that time to divine, 1,000 years is like a day is like 1,000 years. So when he was given this coin, and I don't have a Roman coin, but I do have a dollar bill, right? This is U.S. currency. This is a dollar bill with the face of George Washington on it. So when the great teacher was given a coin, right? Again, I have a dollar bill, but given currency, what he was saying was, this is human currency, right? This is human currency. This is not divine currency. This is not priceless currency, right? Empires come and go, right? And their currencies come and go. So give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, right? Give unto the divine what is the divine. So when we talk about time, again, it's not just a currency that you use along with your job-related skills, right? To earn money, right? For a paycheck. It's more than that. It's a priceless currency. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples of people who've reached out to me in the recent past. One we're going to call Mizzy. Mizzy told me, she said, "Albert, I have this amazing anxiety." She said, "Beto, I wake up every day and I'm just filled with anxiety." She said, "I feel like I'm running out of time." She said, "I feel like I'm running out of time. I turned 50 recently, and I need help. I'm just dealing with this anxiety, and I know I've been practicing meditation and doing all these other things, and but it's still with me. It's still here, and it's every day I wake up like this." So I started sharing with her my ideas of time, right? And that we are created in the image of the divine, for which time is limitless. And how we are endless, right? We are energy, right? And we know energy cannot die, cannot be destroyed, right? Science tells us that. And how I believe in immortality, right? Not just spiritual immortality, but physical immortality. I believe the great teacher came to earth, right? Resurrected from the dead to show us, to demonstrate that death is an untruth. It's not truth. Yes, it's reality, but it's not truth. He ascended to heaven alive as a demonstration of immortality, right? That we can live forever in our physical bodies, right? Not just our spirits or minds, but our physical bodies. And he wasn't the only one. There's other cases of this, other documented cases of people ascending to heaven alive in their physical bodies, right? Demonstrating immortality. So I shared this with her. Her eyes open up, right? Her ears open up. "Oh my God, Beto, this is a miracle." She said, "Oh my God. Tell me more. I can't believe that this is what I needed." And so anyhow, I worked with her for a couple weeks, and after a couple days, she said, "Beto, send me those bracelets, right? Manifest justice, manifest abundance, manifest immortality. I need those bracelets." So anyhow, she had just a miraculous change. Just once where I was able to work with her mind and her faith beliefs, a miraculous change around anxiety. And this idea that she's running out of time. You're not running out of time, I tell her. "Mizzy, you're not running out of time. You have all the time in the universe." Okay, practical tip. If you ever feel like that, if you ever feel like you're running out of time, tell yourself, I have all the time in the universe, because it's true. Your energy cannot be destroyed, right? You're created in the image of the divine, which is, the divine is endless. And if we're created in the image of the divine, we are endless too. So you got to get your head around that. So anyhow, that was the example I wanted to share about Ms. E. Another example, Ms. M. Spoke with Ms. M last month. Ms. M reached out and said, Beto, 10 years ago, I came down with cancer. I battled cancer and went into remission. I'm doing really well now. But during that time when I was battling cancer, at the beginning, I came down with this fear of death, this amazing fear of death. And it's at bay now. I practice spiritual practices, none of the least which is meditation and other things. But, it's at bay, but it's still there, right? It may be at arm's length, right? But it's still there. And so I started sharing with her about, my understanding of time, right? My understanding of immortality. And her eyes open, right? She's like, oh my goodness. She said, Beto, tell me more. Where were you 10 years ago, right? Where were you 10 years ago? This is amazing information. She said, I never looked at it this way. So, when we're dealing with anxiety, we got to look at things differently. And I know a lot of people right now are dealing with anxiety, right? We have the greatest pandemic the planet's ever seen since the last 100 years, right? This COVID-19 crisis, right? We're dealing with joblessness that the world, especially in the U.S., has not seen since the 1930s. Social unrest, right? Greater than in the 1960s. We're dealing with all of these things, and it's creating anxiety in people. But if we can get our heads around what time really is, right? It's just a tool that our minds use to help assess and to help to organize things. It makes a huge difference. So I wanted to make sure I shared that. Going back to the great teacher, and going back to this idea of currency, I want to talk now about love, right? The divine currency, the currency that cannot be bought, right? You can't put a price tag on love, so it's priceless, but it's also divine, right? Because the divine is love, and we're created in the image of the divine, which means we're love. We just need to manifest it, right? Manifesting divine currency. So the great teacher talked about 2 commandments, right? The two greatest commandments. One is to love the divine with all thy mind, with all thy heart, with all thy soul. And number 2, to love thy neighbor, right? To love thy neighbor, to love others as thyself. So practical examples of how we can manifest that second greatest commandment here and now, today, right now. As we know, the public health officials have told us that the greatest threat to our public health right now is institutional racism. Okay? The greatest threat to our public health right now is institutional racism. So how do I manifest my love for my neighbor, knowing that? By supporting what's going on in the streets. The protesters, demonstrators, me being one of them, are on the streets marching, protesting, demonstrating, right? Attending visuals, organizing, for an end to institutional racism, right? To manifest racial justice. Why? Out of love for thy neighbor, right? This began in the wake of the George Floyd heinous, tragic murder at the hands of the Minneapolis police back on Memorial Day at the end of May there in Minneapolis. And so people who love thy neighbor were able to put themselves in George Floyd's, shoes, so to speak, and say, man, like, we got to do something. We need justice, right? We need to manifest justice for George Floyd, and not just George Floyd, right? But Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, and I can go on with names. But what's going on in the streets is they're demonstrating love for thy neighbor. The second greatest commandment, as the great teacher taught us. Right now with the COVID-19 crisis, I've been reading the news. I was reading the news this morning about masks, right? There's a Mr. Waldron. They're just outside of Jacksonville, Florida, and he's a county commissioner. And just last week, Mr. Waldron voted down a measure to make face masks, right? To make face masks a mandate. He voted against it. He didn't want to have any, he didn't vote for it. And so, ironically and sadly, just this week, Mr. Waldron, the week after he voted against face masks, came down with COVID-19. And as of Friday afternoon, it became so bad that he had to be hospitalized, right? Again, sadly, yet ironically. So, love for thy neighbor. Wear your face mask. The public health officials tell us that it helps prevent the spread of COVID-19. I'm very healthy, very fit, immortal, but I still wear my face masks. I don't believe in putting the divine to the test. The great teacher taught us that. Don't put the divine to the test. The public health officials are telling us to do this. It's a mandate in my state. I do it, right? As a matter of fact, I have two. I have this blue face mask here, right? My sons gave me a blue face mask. So I wear this blue face mask. And I also got this red face mask. They said if you're going to have blue, you have to have red. So I got this red face mask, and I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. I always wanted to look a little bit like a bank robber, so now I get to look like a bank robber, and the police don't harass me. So it's wonderful, right? So again, love for thy neighbor, face mask. Social distancing, right? Public health officials tell us maintain 6 feet of social distance. That's another way we manifest love for thy neighbor right now during this pandemic. A young man, 30 years old, his family said he had no underlying conditions, attended a COVID party in San Antonio, Texas. All right, I told you at the beginning I was going to have a couple examples for you from Texas. I know a couple of people are watching live are from Texas, USA. So this young man, 30 years old, according to his family, no underlying medical conditions, attended a COVID party. And what is a COVID party? A COVID party is a party which somebody who's been infected by COVID throws to see if it's real, right? Whoever throws it apparently doesn't have any sort of condition. They're asymptomatic. There's no symptoms. So they throw this party to see if it's really a hoax and if other people get infected or whatnot. So anyway, this 30-year-old decides to attend, and he ends up becoming infected. His infection is so bad that he ends up in the hospital. And this is recorded. His last words are recorded. Right before he died, he told a nurse, he said, I made a mistake. Attended this COVID party, made a mistake. I thought it was a hoax, right? Thought COVID-19 was a hoax. And he ended up paying. He ended up paying the ultimate price. He died. He died after attending this COVID party. He got infected with COVID-19 and passed away there at a local hospital in San Antonio. I believe it was the Methodist hospital there in San Antonio, but you can look it up. It's online. The story's online. So, social distancing. Public health officials ask you to social distancing. They make it a mandate. Do it. It's how you demonstrate your love for thy neighbor. Not only that, but you're not putting the divine to the test, right? You're staying under the covering of the divine. So social distancing is another example of how we can demonstrate our love for thy neighbor. A third example I want to bring up is staying close to home. And this example, again, is from Texas. My mother's youngest sister, La Tia, we'll call her Tia I, because her first initial of her first initial of her first name is I. So Tia I, our Aunt I, she was born in this city there in Texas, Corpus Christi, Texas. And so Corpus Christi, as early as June, right, had relatively no coronavirus cases. I mean, very, very few coronavirus cases. So much so that people were allowed to be indoors at restaurants, for example, without having to wear masks, right? No mask required, right? Because we have very few COVID-19 cases in Corpus Christi, Texas. So what changed? People from the bigger cities there in Texas, right? San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, Houston, saw Corpus Christi as an oasis, right? It's a beachfront community. no mask required. It's an oasis from the pandemic. We can go there and take a break from the pandemic and live, relatively like how we used to live before, right? Without masks and social distancing and all this stuff. And so people, instead of staying close to home like we're told to do by the public health official, decided they'd venture to Corpus Christi, right? Take a break from the pandemic. Take a break from coronavirus and COVID-19 and masks and all this social distancing and whatnot. So they go, and with June, right? Corpus Christi, relatively no coronavirus cases. July, we're not even halfway through July. They've already had 38 deaths. This is not a mega city. It's a good sized city, right? But it's not a mega city. 38 deaths is a lot for Corpus Christi, in July. And again, we're not even halfway through July. Just on Thursday, Corpus Christi reported 11,000 coronavirus cases, right? COVID-19 cases. In June, there were days and days and days where that number was 0. Nowhere near 11,000, right? Love thy neighbor as thyself, right? How do you demonstrate that? How do you put that to practice here and now, today, during this pandemic? Stay near home. If the public health officials tell you stay near home, right? Don't go to Corpus Christi, right? Don't take the coronavirus. Don't take COVID-19 to Corpus Christi. Stay near home, right? They tell you to wear masks, right? Like I said before, I had to put on the mask, right? If they tell you to social distance. Don't go to these COVID parties. Or if you're, at a family barbecue, maintain that distance, right? Maintain that distance. So those are some examples of how you can demonstrate that love for thy neighbor, or manifest that currency, right? That priceless divine currency. Priceless because we know money can't buy love. Priceless and divine currency of love, right? So I want to end with this. What the ancient wisdom, right? Those of you who have seen me speak before here on Facebook Live or one of the other social media platforms knows that I'd like to talk about ancient wisdom, right? What I've been told or what I've been educated on or what I've been shared about the oral history, an oral prophecy of the Mexica Azteca Maya. And anyhow, the Mexica Azteca Maya talk about time, right? Humankind, human man and woman, time, and they break it up into actually 5 suns. And they say right now we're living at the end of the 4th sun. And this 4th sun is the era of European white supremacy, right? But we're entering now, right, the dawning of the 5th sun. And this 5th sun is going to be all about unity. And during this 5th sun, what's going to happen is, right now during the 4th sun, right, this is, right, one of the main currencies, right, the US dollar bill, right, human currency, right, people worship this, right, they worship, right, the love of money, right, greed, the love of money, the root of all evil, right, they're worshiping human currency, right, they're also worshiping Confederate, right? Idols to white supremacy. I mean, they're worshiping these things. That's going to change in the 5th sun because this isn't going to be, right, the dominant currency anymore. Human-made currency is not going to be the dominant currency. What's going to happen in the 5th sun? It's going to be all about unity, right? Everybody coming together, right? Everybody manifesting justice, abundance, and immortality too. Right? Everybody coming together. So what will happen in the 5th sun, which is already dawning now, is there's going to be this incredible transformation from human-made currency, right, to divine currency, right, to love. Love is going to become the currency during the 5th sun. It's going to be all about unity. It's going to be all about love. And we're entering that right now. And we see that. We see that on the streets of not just the U.S., but around the world. People taking to the streets, right? They're protesting, they're marching, right? No justice, no peace, no justice, no peace. And what they're doing in reality is they're quaking the streets. Because Mexica Azteca Maya prophecy tells us that the 4th sun is going to end in earthquakes. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's what we're experiencing. That's what we are in the midst of right now, is that these marchers, right, and I'm one of them, is out there, right? We're marching, no justice, no peace. We're quaking the streets. The streets are quaking. That's what's bringing about this change, right? The change which is ending the 4th sun, ending that era of white supremacy, of European supremacy, and moving into this fifth son, right? This son, this era of unity, when we all come together and learn to live in harmony with each other, not just with each other, but with nature, right? Learning to live in unity, and the currency, right? The human currency of the empires, right? Which what Jesus was referring to when he said, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, give unto George Washington what is George Washington. Empires come and go, right? And their currencies come and go. But the divine currency of love, exists forever, as do we, because the divine is love and we are love. So I'm going to go ahead and end there. I thank you so much for joining me this morning for my Facebook Live, or today, because I know some of you are in Europe and in other places. So